Hi everyone, we are experiencing technical difficulties, but please bear with us.
Ready. Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Morning and welcome to a chilly, very chilly Juma Private Game Reserve. My name is Brett Smith. We have Dangerous Dave Easterbach on camera. And on the other vehicle we have Jamie and Viam. And in final control we have Rebecca and Louise. And it is a very cold 13 degrees Celsius, and I cannot for the life of me remember the Fahrenheit, but I presume it's around 60 something. But the lions are roaring, and 66, there we go. Jamie and I are both in search of these lions. I'm hoping to find that mating pair we had a very brief visual of yesterday. So it sounded like they were north of camp towards the Buffalo's Hook boundary, so fingers crossed that they're still in Juma. If no luck here, we're going to head towards the east. There were another mating pair near Cheetah Cutline, but in Torchwood. Maybe they've decided to come for a little visitation for the honeymoon on Juma. If not, we will be heading further east towards Cheetah Plains and seeing if we can follow up on those female leopard and cub tracks. But while the lions are roaring close to camp, it's definitely a case of a cat in the hand is worth about 20 in the bush, not 2. So we'll try see if we can get a cat in the hand before we start scraping around for a leopard. So now we're on the northern boundary. Just making sure there are no tracks here. And you can see lovely light coming through up ahead of me. And there is literally not a cloud in the sky. And that's why it's so chilly this morning. And you can see bundled up. I'm even thinking that if it drops below 66, I might have to add an extra layer underneath my jacket. So far there's only 3, I might need to go to 4 layers. And it is a beautiful time of the morning. I'm just going to switch off for a second. And this time of the morning is quite fascinating to me. Because apart from occasionally hearing some of the big cats, there's almost no sound. It's so still. There's one crested francolin calling in the distance. And a hornbill starting to wake up. It is just beautiful though. Absolutely gorgeous. Now what we're hoping for is a male lion to break the silence. And I know a lot of you like that, and when I was a little boy, I was taught by my grandfather and my father, what does a male lion say? That's a really good way to teach a young child about what a lion roar means. So what they say is a lion says, "Whose land is it? Whose land is it? Whose land is it? It's mine, it's mine, it's mine." So of course most lion roars are territorial to let all the other lions know that it is their land. But unfortunately my lion roar did not prompt a response. Don't think I quite have the baritone. Should get James to do it with that deep voice of his. You can hear ground hornbills calling in the east. Do, 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 do. Can we hear that, Dave? Just in the distance there. Hippo back towards Sydney's waterhole. And now, it's amazing, in these few minutes, the amount of birds that have started calling has increased. I'm just going to keep quiet for a second and see how many birds you guys can hear. Tell me how many species of bird you can hear. And send that through to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. So I'm going to keep quiet for 30 seconds. And actually include the animals as well. So what birds and animals can you hear?
Quick! Crash cut!
Or silver.
Look at what we found! I think we've either found a genet or an African wildcat. Also, good morning. Sorry for the surprise shock and all of that. But we just had to get you over here. Not often we see these mysterious little animals. I don't think its ears are big enough for a wildcat. I think we've got a genet here. Oh, this is incredible. What an awesome way to start the morning. Come on, little one. Time to come out. Just, pace doesn't look right for a wildcat. I mean, for a genet, though, does it? Dare we believe we have an African wildcat on camera? Not quite for Endangered Species Day, but almost. This is very, very exciting. Could not be less bothered by our presence. It's very far away on our northern boundary, which is why we can't quite get to it, unfortunately. Somehow I don't think it's been responsible for the roars that both Brent and myself have been following up. Might be a little bit small for that. Oh. Some interesting sounds happening in the bush there. Alarm calls. We need it to just move. Just move a little bit for us so that we can get your identity. It's sitting too upright for a genet. Shall we try going forward a little bit? Since it doesn't seem to want to move, let's see if we can't get a different perspective on it. Don't go away, please. No, that's going to be our best view is back there.
Right, you can see.
You can see?
Side of his head.
Oh, awesome. Look at that.
No, that doesn't look like a genet to me.
That is not a genet. That is an African wildcat. How absolutely incredible. That's a first for me out here. I have yet to see one. Incredibly shy and retiring. You hardly ever get a chance to see them, so I hope you're all incredibly excited. This is absolutely awesome. Hello. There you go. You can really see the feline face. The ancestors to our domestic cats. I'm just going to lift my arm up a little bit to try and change the angle of this light slightly. There we go. The ancestors of our... Oh. They're the lions. Across the boundary. But never mind, we've got something so exciting. A critically endangered animal. Just ever so slightly distinct from our domestic cats. Slight red tinge behind the ears. Slightly longer, more extended limbs. But basically, very, very similar looking. There you can actually almost see the red tinge behind the ears. Oh, I hope you're all across the globe as excited as I am and you're watching this live. Hey, VM, is this your first African wildcat?
In the wild.
In the wild. Oh, wow, this is actually VM's first wild African wildcat in the wild.
I think I've seen one in the Kalahari.
Seen one in the Kalahari,
But that doesn't
okay.
count because it's millions.
Okay. Yes, there's quite a few in the desert. Oh, this is awesome. Now, where I used to work, we'd see them all the time, but they were rescued wildcats, if that makes sense. So they were almost semi-domesticated. They lived wild, but they used to come and wander into our house every now and again. And most at risk due to crossbreeding with domestic feral cats. Oh, don't disappear. Don't duck down there. Oh, my word. My arm's about to fall off. I should not have done that superhero workout yesterday that James introduced me to. My shoulder's just not working. Let's go, since it has ducked its head down, I think let's try go back to where we were. Hey, Liam, it's not a leopard, but it's something almost as exciting. Let's go back a little bit. Come on, Jigger, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Here's a good Jigger. Yay! Sorry, I'm so excited. I've completely forgotten to tell you who I am. If you have joined us for the first time, I'm not going to look at you just because I'm about to lose this cat. But my name is Jamie. Hello. And I have VM on camera with me. And a cat, I think, has ducked. It's lying down now completely. I just saw the briefest flash of its eyes before it lay down. Sure. Now, this is the kind of stuff that you'll find for all of us as guides we get exceptionally excited about. Oh, wow. The first for me on Djuma. I'm not sure how many of you have seen them before on these live drives, but I would love to know, for those of you who've been watching for years, if you have, or how many wildcats you've seen out here. They're so secretive and shy, we hardly ever get to see them.
Can you still see it?
No, I can't. I think it's just lying down there, though. I didn't see it move off. Let's go shuffling forward a bit. It's just behind those thick patches of dead branches. Let's try looking from the other angle, since we haven't got a view here. So exciting. Right, so for those of you who've been watching for ages, if you could let me know if you've ever, oh, there it is. If you've ever seen an African wildcat before on our live drives, you can send that through on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Can you see it there, Viam? No. Just the angle's a little bit wrong. It's hiding behind that dead stump that's sticking up. You could see its eye reflecting every now and again. Yes, but send through your info on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or email through to questions@wildearth.tv. We would really appreciate hearing from you. And of course, if you are joining us for the first time, it's not limited to just our regular viewers. If you're new and you want to ask questions about our stunning sighting of an African wildcat, so excited, you can send through that on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or questions@wildearth.tv. I'm going to send you across to Brent with a much, much bigger cousin, and I'm going to see if I can't get you another view of this animal.
There we go. The moon is setting in the west and just disappearing through the trees. And as Jamie has had the first sighting ever of an African wildcat, we've got a cat we see a little bit more often. It looks like the Nkuma Pride. We've got 2 lionesses here at the moment. This one seems like she spotted something. Is it another lion? Or is it something to eat? She's just got up. And she's looking down towards the little river system. Now, this is the... Okay, guys, while we stay with these lions, let's go back to the African wildcat, because that's something we've never seen before.
Here we go. an even better view, and you can really see the slight red patches to the back of the ears. Now, so many of you, I'm sure, are thinking, but that looks just like my cat at home, or so similar. Oopsie, sorry, trying to hold my spotlight absolutely still. And of course, that is exactly where our domestic cats came from. The great cats that the Egyptians used to worship. You have one right in front of you. And as with all cats, just accepting that level of worship as its due and attention. Hello, gorgeous. What a lovely surprise you have been. A first for myself on these live drives, a first for VM, and a first for most of you. And you see, you just never know where that morning's going to take you. We were looking for lions. We were actually racing Brent to find the lions. We found something incredibly exciting. That's incredible. So Jen B tells us that her first trip to Africa, the first cat she saw was an African wildcat, and that because she didn't realize what she was seeing, she was quite disappointed that the first cat she saw looked like her neighbor's tabby cat. I'm totally with you there. I know what you mean. The first African wildcat I saw when I started working as a guide, so not the first that I'd ever seen in the wild in my life, but the first properly working as a guide, was sitting on an airstrip. And we couldn't believe how incredibly habituated this thing was, to the point that the guide that I was with and myself, we both got out of the car and we were lying on our stomach 5 meters away from it taking pictures, thinking this is absolutely incredible. It was only afterwards, of course, that we learned that it was a rehabilitated wildcat that was incredibly used to humans and that we could probably have touched if we wanted to, but of course contact kept to an absolute minimum with wild animals being rehabilitated. And there are huge programs out there to try and, first of all, spay or neuter the cats of in the areas surrounding game reserves such as this one. But then also to help to rehabilitate and to rescue any wildcats that have found themselves orphaned for various reasons. Look at that perfect red tinge. Now you can really see what I was talking about behind the ears. That is one of the distinctive features of an African wildcat. And Vancy in California tells me that she's never seen one in the 6 years that she's been watching the show. This is her first African wildcat. Sorry, Vancy, my arm has gone completely dead. Pins and needles. That's okay, it's worth it. I'm so thrilled that we could share this experience with all of you. I mean, you know why we stopped, actually? We stopped to look at the moon, which we're not even going to move the camera to show you the moon. That is for another day. The moon is always there. African wildcats are absolutely not. And I just flipped my spotlight over to the right. I don't know why. And there it was. No idea if it's a male or a female, of course. Not very much in the way of sexual dimorphism. As with most non-monogamous animals like lions, leopards, there's a considerable size difference between the males and the females, but beyond that, no easy way to tell the difference. And I've been sent pictures, and I must actually look for you, of I also must find you a picture that I have of an African wildcat acting as a surrogate mom to a serval where I used to work, to a serval kitten. Incredible pictures. I'll find them for you and I'll show you. I'll get Emma to send them through. Now, Gail in Calgary, you've also been watching for several years, and you're saying this is a first for you, and you wanted to know why they are so endangered. They're actually probably more common than we realize. They're incredibly secretive, and of course, being so small, they aren't often seen, especially in summer. That's why we're so lucky to be going into winter now. I mean, I say that like it wasn't going to happen anyway, but there's very little vegetation to hide it. They're small, they're secretive, but the biggest threat to them, as I mentioned earlier, is crossbreeding with feral cats. We're very fortunate here in that we are in an enormous wildlife area, an enormous conservation area, as Gail you would know, with 4 million hectares. But every reserve, unfortunately, has to have a boundary, and next to every boundary will be human habitation, and with that, feral cats. And it's not quite so bad up here in the northern Sabi sands where we are, but if you go further south to places like Hazy View, I don't know if any of you have ever stayed around Hazy View, or those surrounding areas, very close to the southern boundary of the Kruger Park, and you will have had feral cats wandering around all the time. So that is the biggest threat, because they are so close as a species that they can breed. And what that does essentially, obviously, is it just dilutes the African wildcat genetics and slowly starts just converting them to your average domestic or feral cat, which is the last thing that we want. Which is why there's such big projects to neuter cats in the areas, not just obviously for their own good as well, so that we aren't overrun by stray cats, but most importantly so we can protect our wildlife.
I think it needs a scratch behind the ear.
I think so too. VM has said it. He thinks that it leaves a scratch behind the ear. I wonder how it would react. I think we'd see the flash of the tail disappearing in. But I mean, it's so true, because it looks so similar to our cats. Both VM and myself both have pet cats back home, or outside of this reserve. Obviously, it's deeply forbidden to have a pet cat inside of a reserve. And Rachel, yes, they are indeed nocturnal. But, that being said, they're kind of nocturnal in the same way that leopards are nocturnal. Guys, I need to call this in on the Game Drive channel. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, Brent's got it. I do need to call this in. Lex for Jamie. Lex. Sorry, just to let you know, I've got an African wildcat relatively flat here on Buffels Hook cut line. I don't know if you want to take a chance. We're very close to Sydney's Dam, just to the east of it. No problem, it's static for now. I'll keep you updated. Hello, gorgeous. I'm actually going to take the spotlight right off it now so that you get the full effect of those eyes. Oh, daytime is coming, and cat is starting to get a little bit more aware of what's happening. You'll find that with serval, caracal, and wildcat, all of the nocturnal, medium to small-sized cats, they tend to be, and even actually unhabituated leopards, they tend to be okay at night with spotlights, relatively relaxed, but as soon as day arrives, they start to get slightly nervous. And I think that we could find that happens here. I hope that Lex gets here in time. This is a really exciting and rare sighting for the guests that he has on the back of his vehicle. Absolutely incredible. Oh, I'm so glad we've got this camera, VM. Sure. Did not expect my morning to go this way. I certainly didn't expect to get to spend this long with it. Slightly. Oh, sorry, Rachel. Being a bit distracted here. Just too much adrenaline floating through my system, actually. I was explaining about them being nocturnal. Yes, so nocturnal in the same way leopards are. In other words, you could see them moving about at any time of the day. And it's also area dependent and lion and leopard density dependent. So a reserve that I used to work at up near All Days, if you ever want to Google, my advice to you is you can Google All Days, literally all days, but don't go there. I would strongly suggest, unless you're stopping for petrol on your way to Botswana, avoid that little, what we call dorp, little dorpy, little town. But in that area we used to see them all the time, but there were no wild lions or even that many wild leopards left in that area. They were just slowly starting to be rehabilitated back in and reintroduced due to conflict mainly with farmers. But you will see them moving about if they're comfortable during the day and at night. Now, I was talking about spotlighting and medium to small cats and even unhabituated leopards, confident at night with a spotlight on them because they know that that is their realm, that is where they have the advantage with their incredible eyesight. But during the day, they start to get a bit more skittish, and I'm just really hoping that this cat is feeling a bit too cold to go dashing off. And I certainly know I am. Casting around, looking for any rodents. They're very, very, just like cats, domestic cats, exceptionally good at being opportunists. Same as a leopard or something like that. Catching small rodents, grasshoppers, little birds, anything like that will fall under their diets. Lizards, small reptiles. They've got a vast and wide variety of different animal species that they will feed on. And sorry if I keep casting my eyes back, it's just because I'm making sure our African wildcat hasn't disappeared on us. So excited that this has been the start. Solitary animals, just like a leopard, very similar in terms of social structure to a domestic cat or even feral cats. So not necessarily specifically territorial. They will maintain a home range that they live in, and they will maintain a relatively solitary lifestyle, and then them obviously just coming together to mate or for females with kittens. Still there, still hunched over, watching us with those very typical eyes. All of you with pet cats at home are so familiar with this posture and with this expression. And I mentioned that their density and their behavior is dependent on the circumstances and the ecology of the area, and particularly the presence of big cats. Melissa, you were wondering about their interactions with leopards, since they also climb trees, and you're aware of sort of that interaction that happens between most cat species. I've seen pictures of a leopard with a dead wild cat. They will kill them, just as they will actively hunt and kill servals or caracal if they can. That being said, that is an opportunity-driven thing, so it would really only be if a leopard came stumbling past, it might decide to stalk and catch this wildcat. Wildcats are exceptionally fast, and being smaller than a leopard automatically makes them a bit more agile. They can duck and dive, and chances are an African wildcat, if pursued by a leopard, would not seek refuge at the top of a tree. Unless maybe it might think about going to the outermost branches, but that's unlikely. Chances are what it would do is it would actually just run into the thickest clump of vegetation it could squeeze itself into, or just keep running until the leopard decided to give up. So remember that interaction we had with Tsakani? We didn't quite get it on camera, Tsakani being a young female leopard, but she disrupted a civet. She actually, I think, went to go and scent mark on a bush, and it was where the civet was sleeping for the day. And the civet shot off as quickly as possible. There was a very deep growl, and then off it went. And she kind of thought about following it, but actually couldn't be bothered. All right, guys, I'm going to send you back across to Brent, whose lions are going to be mating. I'm going to help Lex get here, and we'll be back shortly.
So the lions are about to mate, and the female's flirting just over here. We're just trying to get into the right position. They came out of a very thick little river system. Here we go, right in front of us. And you can see the male following the female. She came and initiated a bit of a flirting, and of course Mr. Birmingham is definitely not going to say no. Unfortunately, they are heading north at the moment. That is not a good direction for us, or northeast actually, to be more precise. Let's see our boundary there. Just try and get up ahead of them. There's a big hole there, we're not going to go that way then. But really great. 2 cats, the smallest cat we get, and the biggest cat we get in the first few minutes of drive. Isn't that amazing? Look at this. So he's going to shadow her constantly. I'm just trying to find a spot. Please don't go across the road. Of course, they're not going to listen to me. Now, there is still another lioness lying up. Well, she was lying up further down the road, away from the mating pair. Oh, here we go. Get ready, Dan. Oh, they found something smelly to roll in. Could be hippo dung, could be elephant dung. There's the flirting. So she's quite young. We only saw them mate once through the thicket yesterday. Oh, that's a good male lion. Bring her back this way. Or has he found some more? It looks like hippo dung that they're rolling in. Look at that. Oh. Looks like she's really enjoying that. Actually, might even be buffalo urine. I'm trying to see. It's a bit difficult for me. It's a bit far. Oh, this is sort of scratching the sand onto herself. And he's found some hippo dung. I can see that. Very dirty lions once they're finished with this rolling session. Look at how she's scooping the sand there. Really, look at how dirty she is. See, she's smelling. I think it could be urine that she's rolling in. Buffalo or elephant. Really trying to get the most out of that scent. Oh, that looks so good. Aren't they just exquisite animals? Even when they've got a bit of dirt on them. So this is the same pair we saw on yesterday's sunrise safari that disappeared into an impenetrable river system. Oh, the wildcat's on the move. Let's go back there quickly.
Move. Okay, there's a very good chance that this African wildcat is about to run. We've got a nice moment to just enjoy it very briefly before it disappears off. I'm just going to keep watching it very carefully. Now when Lex does come in, I'm going to have to move so that he can give him a view of where the cat is. Bear with me one sec, I'm just going to chat to him quickly. Lex, I'm going to shift backwards once and let you come in. There's a fallen log at the back that he's just in front of. Still completely flat, but I don't know that you're going to see it that well from your perspective. Probably about 20 meters, 30 meters in. I'm going to go backwards for you. Awesome, and totally chilled for now. I'm hoping it's not going to move when I move. Okay guys, we're going to take this view and I'm going to let Lex move forward a little bit. Like we can still see it perfectly. Let's see if they can spot it. Unless you know it's there, it's really tricky to see where it is. Really, really such an exciting sighting that we just had to share. You got it yet? Have you got it? If you go where all these sort of stumpy acacias are, sort of just to the right of those, there's a fallen acacia, and then just behind that, it's sitting there. So it's so difficult to point out exactly where it is. Now, Lucy in South Bend, Indiana. This is the typical colouring of an African wildcat, yes. They don't come really in much in the way of variety. Some not in the same way our domestic cats do. So some might have a little bit more in the way of stripes. Others might be a little bit of a deeper brown, maybe a lighter brown. And again, that's area dependent. Whatever that particular ecosystem has evolutionarily wise selected for will be exactly what you're seeing. So certain soil types will affect the color, certain vegetation types. So there's not as much variety as you would get in a domestic cat. You certainly wouldn't get, for example, a ginger variety or a tortoiseshell variety. That's something that we've introduced. And Tammy Peterson, you were wondering about whether or not they meow like a house cat. And the answer is not as much, no. What's really bizarre is that apparently domestic cats have learned to meow when they communicate with humans. It's not a typical sound that a cat makes in its day-to-day wild life. Now, domestic cats have learned to do it. It's one of their ways of communicating with us. But wild cats generally in the wild don't meow all that often. They will hiss and spit and yowl, which are different things to meowing. But I have been meowed at by a wild cat before. Again, same story that I was telling you earlier, the ones that were rehabilitated into the wild but still came back to visit every now and again for a bit of company and, if I'm honest, a little bit of food every now and again. But I've been meowed at, yes, once. but generally that's not a sound that we associate with wild cats. All the other cat sounds, absolutely, and their body language. For those of you who have domestic cats, body language of your domestic cat at home is incredibly, pretty much spot on with the signs that an African wildcat will give you. So from the ears to the thrashing tail, hissing, spitting, puffing themselves up, or in this particular case, what we're seeing here, relaxed but alert and aware of what's happening. Isn't this incredible that we've got such a relaxed sighting? Are you okay there, Lex?
Yeah,
Cool, perfect. Now, Aaron, you were wondering about an African wildcat's home range, and they actually can have incredibly large home ranges, and in some cases can be almost completely nomadic in where they go, particularly, of course, animals that are setting out to disperse. But most of them will have home ranges that they move about in, and then dominant males will have almost territories, but territories that are not necessarily exclusive of other males. Does that make sense? So they'll have an area that they mark out, like feral cats, and they probably will be the most dominant, but they will tolerate the presence of other males in that area, particularly younger males. Oh, this is so incredible. I can't believe we're still sitting with this cat. I was excited enough to catch a glimpse of it. I did not expect for us to be enjoying this sighting with them.
Maybe it's a lucky day and she's got kittens.
Ah, Vim. Vim now getting really hopeful that perhaps we're going to be super lucky and she's got kittens somewhere. Can you imagine if a bundle of fluff just came barreling out of the bushes? That would really top off the day completely. This is so cool. All fluffed up against the cold. You know what one of the other best parts of this particular sighting has been? This is one of the coldest mornings we've had so far, and Liam and myself haven't had to move anywhere. We haven't had the wind chill factor one little bit this morning.
So
I'm going to send you back from our smallest cat out here, or one of our smallest cats, to one of the largest, back to Brent.
So the male lion is doing us the favors this morning, and he's pulled the young Nkahuma lioness back across onto Juma, and she's found herself a perch atop a large termite down. She's literally looking down at us, or she's actually looking back to where the other female was. So this is the youngest of the Nkahuma lionesses. Look at that. I hope you guys are getting the most spectacular screenshots. I'm going to snap a picture. If you do get a great screenshot, share them with us on the Safari Live Facebook page or on Twitter with the hashtag Safari Live. Look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? She is turning into a beautiful adult lion, and it's hard to believe when I arrived how much she's grown since then. Of course, she did have a sister who unfortunately didn't make it. We're speculating, because we didn't see it happen, that it was probably killed by one of the Birmingham boys when she was too young to mate. So she's managed to survive this incredibly difficult time of a coalition takeover. Oh, she's going to jump on him. Oh, no. But she's been flirting without mating. We only saw them mate once very briefly yesterday. But see that tail flick? She's definitely flirting. Hopefully they're not looking for a little bit of privacy behind the termite mound. Let's go have a look. So they are going into quite a difficult area to the block to the north of the Juma or the Vuyatela Dam. Oh, they're jogging, they're running. Oh, yeah. Trying to catch up with them in here is a little bit difficult, so hold on, don't fall off. So while we catch up with these lions that are sprinting through the block after each other, let's go back to the smallest cat at Tuma.
Well, just to let you guys know that we are experiencing some internet difficulties in Final Control, so please don't stop sending through your questions. We're not ignoring them. We just, at the moment, can't see them. Please don't stress out that we are not listening to you. We just, at present time, you can imagine, internet connectivity out in the middle of the bush comes and goes every now and again. It's relatively reliable, but at the moment it's been attacked by gremlins. But at least we've still got you out on a live safari, watching an African wildcat. I can't believe this. I can't believe we're still here. This is bizarre. And I thought it was going to be a horrible morning because I've already lost one glove. And I thought that was going to set the tone for the day. Luckily not. Apparently having one glove is good luck. Amazing. Obviously, as you can see, animal completely aware of our presence, but not concerned. I think actually cold is one of the big reasons why this cat is still hiding out here, because it's a very, very dewy morning. The grass is soaking wet. My steering wheel was soaking wet when I got into the car this morning. And I don't think, just like all cats, I don't think it really relishes the prospect of being damp and cold. That's why it's still hanging out where it is, waiting for the sun to peek over the horizon and start to warm it up. A very typical cat pose with front feet folded in front of us. Well, not in front of us, in front of it, sorry. Brain fried. Imagine if we're lucky enough when the sun does come up to see it stretch out. Oh, look. It's just in the right spot. It's starting to catch the first rays of the sun. They're coming. Oh, seen something. Typical hunting pose. Relaxed to tense and coiled. Oh, no. Quickly double checking what's happening behind it. And whatever the noise was, it's decided that it's not that interested. Safari Dean, just while we're watching it, thinking about hunting, you were wondering if they're strong enough to catch a scrub hare. And probably yes. Particularly, obviously, it goes without saying, a baby scrub hare would be on its menu. But an average size scrub hare, it probably would think twice, but a large male African wildcat, yes. You know how leopards are incredibly powerful and capable of taking on prey that is greater than their own body mass? Well, an African wildcat would be quite prepared to take on a scrub hare. That would be a healthy meal for a cat like this. Generally, though, limited to the smaller types of prey, smaller birds, rodents, elephant shrews, anything along those lines. Oh, nose twitching. Oops. I nearly fell over in the car. Lex explaining it perfectly to his guests that as guides, a sighting like this will absolutely make our week. It's so exciting to see something this rare. Lex says he hasn't seen one of these in years out here. And we've had the most extraordinary sighting with it. Now, Janet from Ontario, you were wondering if we often see their tracks. The answer is no. I have never seen an African wildcat track out here. That being said, have I missed their tracks? Probably. Almost certainly. Now, one thing I have noticed with African wildcats is, unlike other cats... Oh, what we got? Something. Oh, stalk mode. Yeah, there's a huge breeding herd crossing to Sydney's. Oh, there he goes. We can't move. I don't want to mess up its hunt. Stalked off in typical cat mode. Let's just hold on for 1 second. Obviously, I don't want to startle it. Just let me check with Lex if he can still see it. Is it still stalking, Lex? How's that? Thank you. I'll try and roll forward a little bit. Nope. Not so much. Unfortunately not. So the reason I felt confident enough there to start the vehicle is because Lex can see it. So he can let me know whether or not it's appropriate to move or if it's going to affect the hunt in any way. Yeah. Still watching us. The stalk has stopped for now. Absolutely awesome. Grey ghost in Oklahoma. You're wondering about how close to extinction an African wildcat is. The answer is not yet. We're not yet at the point of exceptionally vulnerable or close to extinction. We are sort of around, if I remember the ICUN red status for an African wildcat, I just need to think. I think it's listed as vulnerable rather than critically endangered. So you're looking at the, sort of around that side kind of area. Again, area dependent. We're probably fortunate enough that there's quite a few of them in this area. And unlike its cousin, the small spotted cat, very rare to see, and the incredibly rare black-footed cat, both of which occur a little bit further to the west and to the south of where we are now. I've never seen them. I dream about seeing both of those little species of cat, both slightly smaller than the African wildcat. Oh, tense again. It's like watching a leopard hunt. Beautiful green eyes. I cannot stress enough for new viewers how rare this sighting is. Oh, look at that. There we go. Watch it creeping. It's almost in staccato movements. Just the tips of the ears visible, creeping forward, and almost enhanced. You get an idea of just how incredible that camouflage is. I wonder what it's seen. Just the ears twitching, casting about for whatever it was was hunting. There we go again. Those jerky forward movements. Look at that focus. This is incredible. This is so amazing. An incredible camera work from VM. Poised, ready to pounce on something, some hapless, unsuspecting rodent or bird, something stirring in the morning warmth. And just the slowest of movements. You can just see it moving there behind the sticks. Oh, quickly checking up what we're doing. One eye, one ear visible. And I've got to be very careful not to move too much. I don't know what it's hunting. Just the ears. I'm not sure if you can see them, but we can just see the ears pointed forward. Now looking back at us. The stalk for now, I think, has slowed down at least. Looking at the direction of that one ear that we can see, I think it's looking back at us. I think it's settled for now. I'm going to try and work out exactly what's happening. And while I do that, I'm going to send you back to Brent. But never fear, if anything changes, you'll be straight back across to our vehicle.
We're still with the lions. Unfortunately, they are going directly into that impenetrable river system that we lost them in yesterday. So he lay down, he's coming up behind her, but he's definitely not going to let her out of his sight. Here he is, following her. Hopefully they decide to drop into a section of the drainage line that is accessible to us, but at the moment where they are is not. So they mated once, but way ahead of us in the thickets. But I think it's quite early in the sort of 4 or 5 day mating cycle. So she's still playing hard to get. So they're heading down into this little river system where they spent almost the whole of yesterday and only coming out last night at some point. There they go. Ephraim, they're now Gari Katlan, Professor Katlan. So just letting Ephraim know where they were. Okay. They're going to go inside. We might lose signal down here. Fingers crossed. Sorry, 1 second. They mated once. but they're about to head into that same drainage system again, but fortunately on the fire break this time. There we go. I don't know if we're still with you, but this is a really bad signal spot, but it looks like they're going to go up and through. And yay, signal's still strong. Great, I'm so happy. Look how she's jogging. Every time he gets close and sort of half attempts to become amorous, she scuffles off and flicks her tail at him. Let's see what they do. You can see he's showing quite a lot of intent, and she's showing quite a lot of feminine wiles. There we go. Now they're carrying on along the fire break. They've actually all quickly across to Jamie. The African wildcat's up to something.
We are still with our African wildcat. The stalk has been called off for now, and it's just moved forward into the slowly approaching patch of sunlight. If we're really lucky, we might even get to see it sunbathing. A pose that many of you might be exceptionally familiar with if you have cats at home. There is an enormous breeding herd of buffalo that's just walked across to Sydney's Dam, but I'm afraid to say that it would take a great deal to drag us away from an African wildcat sighting right now. It would probably take a pangolin to remove me. That's my limit. That's about as far as I'm willing to go. It gives you an idea of just how exciting something like this truly is. I said that I can't emphasize this enough for new viewers, because most of you will, or there's a chance that if you are new to the show, you might be thinking, well, we're just sitting looking at what looks like a cat. And it's not. It's one of the rarest sightings we could have had out here. Slight difference, if you look carefully, tricky to see, but there's a slight difference to the shape, the profile shape of an African wildcat to most breeds of domestic cats. And I say that, of course, because as humans we have introduced such a wide variety in terms of shapes, sizes, colors, coats, everything into our domestic breeds. But have a look at the sharpness to the forehead, as well as the sort of the flatness to the face. Just ever so slightly different. Now, we haven't unfortunately got a clear view of it when it stands, but when it does, then you'll be able to see what I mean about the slightly extended long limbs. Kind of like when you compare a leopard to a cheetah. You know that slightly more gangly look that a cheetah has? African wildcats have that look to them. I'm not saying they look like the same shape as a cheetah, but I'm just making that comparison. I cannot believe we are still here with this cat. And I have to be honest, I have no idea where it is. Only vaguely. William's got fantastic eyes and managed to see it from where he is. I still haven't managed to sort out exactly what, or figure out exactly what it was hunting. I haven't seen anything. It wouldn't be incredible if a francolin came past or something similar. And of course, it's breeding season for spurfowls, Natal spurfowls, and crested francolins. So there are lots of little babies about. I saw 2 sets yesterday. And an unsuspecting baby francolin would very definitely be on the menu. Now, they're also capable, as I said, they were opportunistic. They also will occasionally eat fruits as well, just in the sense that it doesn't really help them to be picky. But they're not to the same extent that something like a side-striped jackal or a black-backed jackal might. So although they sort of fill the same niche in terms of being smallish versions of large predators, Jackal much more scavengers, and the African wildcats much more opportunistic and quite lethal hunters. Those of you who've had presence of birds, mice, lizards dropped on your pillow first thing in the morning or in the middle of the night will be familiar with the hunting prowess of the domestic cat. The wildcat is even better at it, obviously. Oh, I promised you I'd find that picture. Let me just have a quick look and see if I've got it with me. It's the most incredible picture of a serval being suckled on a wildcat. It was an orphan serval. That's a really good question from Virginia and Kentucky. We spoke about the risk of leopards. She was wondering if an African wildcat would be at risk of an attack from a bird of prey. The answer is yes. Potentially it would have to be a big bird of prey. They are slightly more stocky than your average domestic cat. So yes, but something like a martial eagle. I wouldn't be able to tell you what the statistics are in terms of wildcats killed by martial eagles. I would guess at saying that it's an exceptionally rare thing. Unlike something of a similar size maybe, or even unlike a mongoose, an African wildcat has an incredible agility and would probably be quite capable of dodging a cat or an attack by an eagle of some kind. Sorry, let me try and get all of my words in the right place next time I say a sentence. It's just the excitement. The excitement is overwhelmed. They're probably their biggest threat, not counting actions of humans or intermingling with stray cats or feral cats. Probably their biggest threat, if I had to guess, would be something like a leopard. Maybe a snake, unlikely, definitely not to eat. But maybe if they picked the wrong snake to tangle with. But no, mainly, and maybe even injury from fighting with other wild cats. You know how domestic and feral cats very often come into conflict with each other, particularly over a female and estrus. Just really hoping it's going to find a nice patch of sun and go and sunbathe for us. Now, Robin, you are wondering whether or not an African wildcat will hoist its kill into a tree in the same way a leopard might. The answer is generally no. Most of their prey will be meal-sized portions, something that they can consume in a matter of minutes or hours. They don't really want to risk drawing attention to themselves. And then they don't have the same jaw structure or strength of claws to really hoist anything too large up into a tree. So Safari Dean asked about a scrub hare kill, for example. So if a large African wildcat killed a relatively large scrub hare, it would probably eat as much as possible and then most likely move on. It might think about stashing it under a bush or somewhere nearby, but chances are, with the number of large scavengers out here and with the number of threats, an African wildcat, almost like a cheetah, is not going to linger over a meal. A cheetah, as you know, once it has killed something, it will eat its fill as quickly as possible and will generally not stick around for more than probably about 12 hours before it decides to move off, just because it doesn't want to come into conflict with lions, leopards, or hyenas. Lions, of course, being one of the biggest scavengers out here. And good morning to Georgianne from Illinois. I hope you're enjoying this African wildcat sighting as much as I am. You were wondering if they will climb trees to avoid predators. Yes, depending on the predators. We discussed earlier about the subject of leopards, and I suggested that I thought that if confronted with a leopard, an African wildcat would, rather than fleeing to a tree, would try and escape in some really thick vegetation, too thick even for a leopard or a cat of a leopard size to crawl through. And I think that just because I don't think it would risk going up onto even the thinnest branches of a tree and risk having the leopard follow. But if lions did appear, there is a chance that it would climb up a tree, or wild dogs, for example, again, and particularly wild dogs, I think. I think if wild dogs came sprinting through here now, I'd just stop for the moment, just in case that happened magically. But I think I've used up that one opportunity once. I think that this wildcat would probably, because of the number of the wild dogs and because they can't climb trees, yes, I think it would dash up into a tree. But I think its usual instinctive response would be to stay close to ground level. Just by the way, on the subject of wild dogs, we've reached their denning season. And what that means is that unless we encounter a dispersal pack, chances are we're not going to be seeing the Investicle or the Sands pack for a little while. You never know. They might come through, but for the most part, they're going to stay close to their den site and their new pups. Watch this space. It's getting quite nice and warm here in the sun, isn't it? Compared to how we started off our morning. Nigel, in the UK, you were wondering about how long ago in history they split from the domestic cats. Nigel, my ability to give you exact dates is relatively limited. It was, as far as I know, some of the earliest domestication of cats was around the time of the Egyptians, and I think it was sort of during the time of, what was that dynasty? Oh, goodness. My memory is failing me. I'm so frustrated because I went to an exhibition of Tutankhamun's tomb recently. There's a specific dynasty where they started to worship cats and they started to actually domesticate them. And they realized that you could utilize them as very useful protectors of their grain. So you know how the Egyptians were very, very good at making the most of the time of farming, when farming was the good seasons for farming, versus times of hardship, and they had silos and places to store their grain. And they realized at that point that the cats would be a very, very useful way of helping to keep and deter rodents. But to give you an exact date, it's a little bit tricky, and it probably wasn't just the Egyptians that did it, although it's just because they've kept such good records that we are aware of that kind of thing. I know that the ancient Romans also would have had domestic cats. So there you go, there's the fuzziest answer I could possibly have given you. Sorry, Nigel. Well, actually, let's do this. So for those of you who are around and have Google at your fingertips, which I do not, perhaps you could let me know exactly what year, not exactly what year because we'll never know exactly which year, but around what time period were domestic cats, or were wild cats slowly domesticated and turned into the pets that we know today. I also know that something stirring in my memory about China as well. But I don't think it's the African wildcat strain. Obviously not, because the African wildcats are in Africa. But I think that there's the possibility that in China, they also started domesticating cats around a similar time period. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm open to it. History has never been my strongest suit. If you know more about the domestication of cats, I'd be thrilled to hear it. a really good question, though, in terms of when the split happens. And of course, the split hasn't ceased to happen because, as I mentioned, there's still that almost constant, and it will be constantly happening despite our best efforts, that constant breeding between domestic cats or feral cats and African wild cats all around the outskirts of game reserves across the country and across throughout Africa. Oh, we're up. Attention seized. Incredible. You'll never look at your domestic cats the same again when they go hunting. You'll always be able to picture this instinctive body posture of their African wild ancestor. This is how deeply rooted a domestic cat's instincts really are. Just look at this. Still can't see whatever it's seen. Moments like this almost seem frozen in time. And there you see that shift in focus. Fierce eyes. Everything about this little animal is born to be a predator. Perfectly hidden, and in fact almost invisible. If we didn't have this camera and we weren't zoomed in to the extent that we were, I would never ever in a million years have known there was an African wildcat there. And Dave, Toronto, you were wondering if an African wildcat dens in the same way other cats do, like leopards and lions. The answer is yes. Although they will probably be slightly less geared towards the more risky drainage line areas, since that's where leopards and lions like to be. And even just a nice thick clump of bushes will suit a wildcat for a den site. I wish I knew what it had seen. You have to wonder if it's stalking the same thing that it was earlier, or if it has spotted something different. Because if it's stalking the same thing it saw earlier, we've got the most incredible display of patience here. Okay, see the slight change in body posture? Still focused, but not immediately intent on a rush and attack. So settling back down, eyelids half closing, and basically going into waiting mode. Hopefully the prey, or hoping that the prey is going to decide to come a little bit closer. Amazing how fast they can go from catnapping or half dozing to intent and alert and ready to pounce. Nope, settled again, especially since the sun is shining in its eyes. And very good morning to Robin again. you were wondering why hunters would hunt African wildcats. It depends on if you're talking about human hunters or animal hunters. So a predatory cat, especially something like a leopard, that has a very, very strong prey drive, particularly for small animals like this, will kill them as a means of reducing competition. That being said, leopards are opportunists, so they will also kill them for food, and they will eat them for food. It's not just a competition thing, it's also that hunting instinct triggered, something that's roughly the size of a prey species that they would usually target, so they will catch them and eat them that way. Lions are a bit too slow, unless the African wildcat is really bumbling and not paying attention. But again, same deal, prey drive. Human hunters, they generally know. Even in areas where hunting does occur, we are, of course, in a completely protected area out here where there is absolutely no hunting allowed at all. All right, change of subject. I'm going to send you back across to Brent to see what's happening there. We'll be back shortly. Robin, I'll finish your question then.
Lions on the Buffelshoek down wall, a hippo in front, and the hippo, of course, is quite upset. Look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? Now, the hippo is not going to like sharing his spot in the world with those lions, although he is quite safe in the water. Isn't that just gorgeous? You can see Mr. Hippo is not happy with life. Now, it's unlikely that they're going to bother him much. I think they're far more interested in each other at the moment. Oh, there's that lion. Every time she moves, he moves with her. Hippo's watching them. Oh, she smelt something nice there up on the down wall. Probably. But quickly across to Jamie, the wildcat's up to something.
Back to stalk mode. Again. Very, very slow, very patient process. But when the final attack does come, it will be lightning fast. I still haven't figured out what it's after. I think my view might be blocked by surrounding trees, and that's maybe why I can't see what's going on. And I don't really want to move the vehicle and risk either upsetting the hunt or losing the view of this cat, because it's very, very difficult to see from where we're sitting. It is perfectly camouflaged. Okay, settled down again from what I can see. Yep, it doesn't look like stalk mode anymore. And I wonder if we shouldn't take this opportunity to just sidle forward so that we will have a slightly clearer view when if and when it does decide to strike. Okay, I'm going to try and roll forward a little bit. While I do, let's see what those lions are up to with Brent.
Well, we had a very interesting little moment while you were gone there. The lions obviously affected the hippo, and he decided he wanted to leave the water where we were. So we had to tell him to behave himself. It was a little bit hairy, but thankfully nothing too bad. So the lions have moved across. We're going to go around. I think our adrenaline's quite high at the moment after that. It's funny, the hippo was watching the lions, and then all of a sudden it just decided it didn't want to be here anymore, and decided that we were obviously also a problem. So I even said today, I said, look, this hippo's getting upset, let's move. And as we moved, he rushed out of the water straight towards us, and I had to bang the side of the car to stop it.
So, in essence, what keeps happening here is poor Rebecca in final control has got to decide between the potential wildcat hunt and views of the lions. So basically what the wildcat is doing is every time you go over to Brent and watch the lions from his perspective, it starts to hunt. Then as soon as you come back onto this vehicle, it goes back to drowsing again. And we seem to be playing a little bit of a game of ping pong here. I don't envy poor Rebecca's decisions making over the next few moments, choosing between lions and an African. Oh, here we go. Going to slowly move up. No, back to dozing again. Might be playing a game of cat and mouse here, quite literally, where the most patient cat wins. Trying to investigate what it has seen. I've been scanning the ground with my binoculars. Can't see anything. But it's so dense around where that wildcat is looking. It could be anything from an elephant shrew to a bushveld gerbil to a lizard. Awesome. We'll just have to wait and see. Blinking very sleepily. Now here's the fascinating thing. When I started up the vehicle to move forward, because I just couldn't quite roll, the cat immediately began stalking again, and it made me wonder whether or not this clever cat has actually learned to use the noise of the vehicle as a distraction tool. So essentially taking that opportunity to sneak forward. That is not unprecedented, as many of you will have read about or seen pictures of. The bigger cats learn to use safari vehicles to help them hunt all the time. Not so much in this area, but certainly in the more open areas of Kenya and Tanzania, Masai Mara and such. Cheetah, leopard, lion, they've learned to use the vehicles as a barrier, almost basically using them like a bush to hide them from the prey that they're stalking. It's not impossible that this cat has learned to use the sound of a vehicle to cover its approach. That being said, I would love to know how many times anybody has seen this particular individual wildcat perfectly relaxed. Look at it. I mean, it couldn't be more relaxed about the fact that we're here. We are a good 60, maybe even 90 feet away from it, though. If we didn't have the camera with its zoom, we would not have ever known that it was there.
It's 28 meters in the camera.
28 meters. Okay, perfect. So basically close to 90 feet. Hey, my distance is spot on. Almost, not quite. I was off by 2 meters. Oh, I can hear baboons as well. Gosh, we could end up having 2 unusual sightings in one. You can hear them squealing away around Sydney's dam. It's probably that same troop that we saw on Sandy Patch a couple of mornings ago. is really trying not to move around too much. And there we go. Thank you so much to Mary Ann in Boston, who has let me know that the subspecies that we are seeing now, or this particular species of... Oh, there's the baboons. Oh my goodness. Baboons, wildcat, it's all happening. Where to look, what to see. Well spotted, VM. Mary Ann, I'll get back to your facts in a moment, because we have an unusual sighting. Oh, there goes that big male racing across the road. Oh, little one riding on the back. There's another big male. You can see how much larger he is than the rest of the individuals in this troop. Yes, hello, we're here. We're watching you. We see you. Oh, here everybody's stopping to have a quick look. And the big male making sure we're not up to mischief. This is incredible. What a morning. Okay, I'm going to make a deal. If this wildcat disappears, then we're going to go follow the baboons. We will find them again, or hopefully we will find them again, but it's not quite a pangolin, so we can't leave the wildcat, especially a wildcat that's stalking. Things could happen. It's still there, oh, thank goodness. I just had sudden nightmares of it disappearing. Phew. All right, baboons, we will get back to, because I actually have some really interesting information for you about baboons and some fascinating facts about their life cycle and their social structure. I want to tell you all about godfathers, but we're not going there just yet, because we were busy talking about Marianne from Boston's facts that she sent through about the African wildcat. The fact that the species emerged about 130,000 years ago, and it was around the Middle East that we have the first evidence of domestication of cats, and that was about 10,000 odd years ago in the Middle East. And that obviously, so quite right about the Egyptians being the first to do it. Close, but not quite right. And I can almost guarantee that it would... I can almost guarantee that it was, in response to farmers attempting to protect their crops. Just to give you a quick update on what's happening with Brent, I'm listening to the Game Drive channel with half a brain, and he has had to leave the lions because there are other vehicles that want to come and join them, and of course we've had an incredible sighting with them this morning, and it's time to let others have a turn. So he has left the lions and moved on, but we will go back to him when he does return to them once again. He will be returning before the end of the sunrise safari, so don't leave your seats. Not that I think that you were going to with an African wildcat in view, who, I have to be honest, I think has decided that a nap in the sun might be slightly more enjoyable than expending energy attempting to chase a rodent or a lizard. True to form, catnapping.
I think it was stalking the sunlight.
I think it was stalking the sunlight. Now, Junebug, who's watching in Texas, you raise a very valid point. How can I tell that this is not just someone's pet? There are a couple of differences. First of all, the position that we're in makes it highly unlikely because we're quite far away from any boundaries. We are relatively close to the gate, but we are not close to any local human populations. The most important difference, and it is typical of an African wildcat, is the red behind the ears. And in the very brief moment that we saw it up and sort of stalking forward a little bit, we started to see the stripes around the legs. I'm with you. It doesn't look all that distinguishable from somebody's pets. First of all, pet cats are forbidden in a game reserve such as this. Definitely not allowed. We'll have to have a nice good look at its legs at some point when it does decide to get up, and you'll be able to see the long-legged difference. And you'll just have to take my word, because I've seen a lot of African wildcats in my life, that those are the difference, and we're definitely looking at one. Also, the stripes around the face are very typical. So, the chances of somebody's feral cat, or a feral cat or domestic cat wandering in here, very slim, but also the chances of it being an exact replica of an African wildcat, exceptionally so. Do I 100% know that this is 100% pure breed African wildcat? There is a different question, because I've already mentioned that there's a huge problem with crossbreeding. And the answer is no, I can't be 100% certain, but just looking at this particular cat, if I had to put it on show as the perfect specimen of what an African wildcat should look like, this is the cat that I would choose. It's just got everything exactly right. Plus, I can promise you I would not spend nearly 2 hours with somebody's domestic cat. Wow, that went quickly. An hour and a half.
Didn't even get you to spend 2 hours with a leopard.
I know. There you go. Liam makes a good point. He can't even get me to spend 2 hours with a sleeping leopard, so 2 hours with a sleeping wildcat is definitely very exciting. Now, James Richard, you were wondering, of the smaller cats, which has the highest population in this area? Ooh. I don't 100% know in this particular area offhand, and I'll tell you why I don't. Because the smallest cats are so cryptic and so unusual that we hardly ever get to see them. What I'll do for you, James, is I'll see if there's anyone out there who has a little bit more research knowledge about them. You know, Panthera collects data on all kinds of rare sightings of small cats like this, but it works perfectly for gathering data on leopards, lions, cheetah, hornbill, wild dog. But it doesn't work quite so well for these smaller cats because they are so cryptic and they are so difficult to see. If I had to really take a guess, I would probably say that the highest population density... I'm too wary. I'm too scared to actually guess here. Hello? Just saying hello to some people heading past us on their way to the camp. Sure. I'm thinking, James, I'm thinking. My brain is working furiously and I'm trying to decide whether to give you my guess or not. If I had to guess, I think that it's relatively well matched between caracal and serval of the smaller species of cats. But please don't quote me on that. I'd rather double check and get back to you on it, because I'm not sure. I don't know for certain, and I'm not entirely sure where I could get hold of an accurate reflection of something like that. There's an further interesting question from James Richards, which is, are African wildcats in competition, or all of the smaller cats in competition with each other, or do they fulfill different ecological niches? There is an overlap, yes. There is an overlap of the niches that they fill. For example, an African wildcat would be capable of killing something like a crested francolin or a spurfowl, which is one of the more common prey species, not spray species, prey species. Oh goodness, some spoonerism early in the morning. That Yes, they would. That is actually one of the specialities of a serval or a caracal out here. But then you've got the fact that the servals and the caracals are probably about double this African wildcat size, if not more so in terms of mass, but certainly double in height. And they can actually, that means they can tackle the larger prey species, even going so far as with caracal to take on impala lambs in very rare circumstances. So there's an overlap of competition, and to quite a large extent, but they do have ever so slightly smaller prey selection, or ever so slight differences in terms of their main core diet. All right, since our cat seems to be quite content to rest in the sun, let's see what Brent's plans are from here on.
So, what an exciting cat morning so far. I still am not going to lie, I'm quite jealous of that African wildcat. Very jealous, in fact. But speaking of cats, we've decided to try make it a really cat-filled morning. So we are heading down now towards Cheetah Plains, and the 2 male cheetah were last seen in Buffelshoek with a kill. So there's a possibility they have moved south again. Also, we had the tracks of Nganyen and the 2 cubs around the sort of central areas of Cheetah Plains, as well as the fact I've just heard now that Shivambalan has left his kill, so maybe he has come south towards Cheetah Plains. So exciting times, and I'm ecstatic. It's just been the most glorious morning, and definitely worth the chill that we've been facing. That Birmingham from last night with the limp, he's also been found on Chitwa, lying next to their waterhole, so we know where he is. So there's still 2 other Birminghams out and about, and I'm quite sure I heard some calling in Torchwood, so maybe the other guys will find them. But what a splendid morning, and we got to try out Facebook Live on Drive, which was quite exciting and quite different. I think I definitely need to get myself one of those selfie stick things, make my life a little bit easier. I think I have one, I just didn't bring it with me. Tisk naughty Brent. I've got literally every other bit of camera paraphernalia one can have with me on Drive, except the one we needed today. But that we know we need to have them on Drive with us. So unfortunately, as we dip down towards the dam in that low area, our signal disappeared. But it is what it is, and it was quite exciting, I won't lie. And you got to see a bit of Dave cleaning camera lenses behind there, and Hubert searching for lions behind me. So very exciting stuff. Definitely going to add a new element, I think, to the live drives. But we might lose you. We're about to go through a dip, but sometimes we make it through here, sometimes we don't. But before we drop down into the abyss, Will and Kathy are wondering, why were the lions rolling in the dung? So there's a couple of different theories about this. It is possible that it might be trying to mask their smell, but I think the lion smell will overpower that. You do see them rolling in lots of smelly things, and rotting meat. So whether it masks their smell or not, maybe to a little degree, but I don't think anything that's going to be majorly effective. But I think they just like it, like a dog or anything likes to roll in something smelly. They might enjoy the smell of hippo urine and hippo dung. And it seems they do have a particular few favorites to roll in. And I think for me, hippo's number one. I've seen them roll in hippo dung and urine more than anything else. Occasionally buffalo, occasionally other lion dung, very smelly, and that's definitely not going to mask any scent. But I think they just really enjoy it. I mean, if you looked at them, that lioness looked like she was having a whale of a time. She really, really loved it. So we're going to continue. Hopefully you don't lose us as we head down into the abyss. But just in case, we're going to jump back on with Jamie and the African wildcat that I'm very jealous about.
Well, you were with Brent en route to Cheetah Plains. I'm sure Brent is very jealous. I think, you know what? I think we might have won the cat search this morning, Viam. I think we did. I think we won the cat search. And don't believe for 1 second if Brent says it's not a competition. It absolutely is. When we set out looking for big cats, it's one that he usually wins. But this morning, that goes to us, even if he did find the lions. This is so incredibly exciting. The interesting thing about this particular, because this is in a way, there's a bit of argument between scholars or evolutionary scientists about the classification of the species, whether it's a species or a subspecies. Because many of you who are watching in Europe will, or maybe even in the Mediterranean regions, you also have a species of wild cat in those kinds of areas. Now, this is classified as a subspecies of wild cat, so the African wild cat. Personally, I feel as though it's geographically distinct enough to be considered to be its own species, but it's classified as Felis sylvestris, and then it's got a second name or a second species specifier to that. So it's part of the Felis family, which is pretty much a given. And if you give me 2 seconds, Libica. So it's got 2 species specification, which makes it, in theory, a subspecies. Now, for those of you who were checking up on my ICUN red list, so you know how they classify the international, or CITES actually essentially classifies each and every animal in terms of its threat level, from the matter of least concern to critically endangered, and then extinct is the next step from there. There's very little information, from what I can gather, on this particular subspecies of wildcat. So if you want to go and check it out, see if you can find where the ICUN has specified this type of wildcat, not wildcats in general, because they're classified as least concern, but this particular wildcat. Be interesting to know. I haven't been able to find any info on that. It would be interesting to know just where it falls. In my opinion, it falls somewhere around the vulnerable stage. Felis sylvestris libica. And I cannot confess to knowing that off the top of my head. I double-checked that while you were with Brent. Kathy Ward and PK, you're both wondering on the subject of our African wildcat, and we spoke about its denning habits earlier. You wanted to know what the average litter size of an African wildcat would be. Now, the African wildcats that I've encountered that have had kittens, and yes, I have really been very fortunate in encountering African wildcat kittens before, the size has been sort of around 2 to 3 kittens as average sizes. They're probably capable, like our domestic cats, of giving birth to more than that, but it's limited to a slightly smaller number. I would guess at the average being around 2 to 3. I can't, because of the nature of being a wild cat rather than a protected domestic cat, a sheltered domestic cat, I can't imagine that it would be capable of raising litters much larger than that. It's probably capable of having them, but I imagine that the average litter size, it remains between sort of 2 to 3 kittens. Anything larger than that, and you're starting to put the mother under tremendous pressure, particularly since it is not a social animal. For wild dogs, having a litter size of 14, 15, up to 20 pups is okay, because the mom always has help with feeding them. But for an African wildcat that has to do it all by herself, anything larger than about 3 would be pushing it. The same goes for leopards, and it's pretty much the same for wildcats as well. Lions can have much more, because again, social cat versus solitary. I think my encounters with the African wildcats, again, they were the habituated, rehabilitated wildcats. So she was perfectly comfortable in letting us watch her kittens. And yes, it was like really watching a domestic cat with her own kittens. I still haven't managed to find that picture of the serval nursing from the wildcat. I'm going to have to get Ems to send me that picture again. And while we wait for our cat to decide what it's going to do, I think that this is pretty much going to be its attitude for the rest of the morning. But you never know, it might still stalk. But while we sit and we watch it, let's see if Brent has reached Cheetah Plains yet.
So, we have turned around. We're no longer heading towards Cheetah Plains. My friend Douglas called me on the radio and said he's got tracks of Queen Karula coming into Djuma. So we're going to head towards there. He's drawn a little circle and dropped a branch where they are. So hopefully she's brought the babies with. So we're going to go have a look at those tracks. They seem quite fresh from this morning. So definitely worth our while going to check there. Cats all about this morning, from big to small, from small to big. Now, Jamie's African Wildcat reminded me of a challenge that I put forward to myself a while ago and to James, but I don't think James was taking it as seriously as I am. And if we get in total, there's a possibility of around 22, oh hello, mister, carnivore species that we can possibly get in the Sabi Sands, and that is not one of them. That is the tallest living land mammal, and a nice dark old male giraffe feeding off a buffalo thorn, one of our evergreen trees. And let's enjoy the giraffe before we continue our carnivore conversation. So it's not uncommon to find male giraffe by themselves. We normally find the females in sort of little herds that are known as towers or journeys, is their collective noun. But the males will only generally hang around those groups of females when there's a chance at procreating. And they are able to move great distances, and their name, giraffe, comes from the Arabic word, the one who walks swiftly. And unfortunately, that giraffe is walking swiftly out of our traverse area. So let's move along back towards where Karula's tracks were. So we're chatting about that little carnivore challenge that I sort of gave to myself. I think it was in December, when it was just James and I around for a long time. If I remember correctly, I'll try work it out again shortly, but there's about 23 or 24 possible species of carnivore that occur in the Sabi Sands. We're only really likely, I think, in the northern Sabi Sands to get about 18 or so, but we'll work that out just now. So, and of course the challenge has to be live. It has to be shared with you. There's no point in me seeing a zorilla or a striped polecat when we're not on air. So just turn the radio down. And so far I think we've got the easy ones: lion, leopard, cheetah, hyena, wild dog. They're the 5 easy of the carnivores. And then, if I'm talking for myself personally now, we've got serval, honey badger, white-tailed mongoose, civet, and large spotted gen. What's that? 10. 10 out of the possible carnivores. Oh, side-striped jackal, black-backed jackal. That makes it 12. Feeling a little bit better now. So we're missing small spotted genet, African wildcats, caracal. Oh, I forgot another one. We're on 13. Slender mongoose and dwarf mongoose, 14. So we're not doing too badly. And brown hyena is another one we're missing. And try, I think. There's water mongoose is another one we're missing. I have seen their tracks here. So some of the ones that are really unlikely are Selous mongoose. They theoretically occur in this area, but there's never actually been a confirmed sighting. The Cape Paulus otter, the lack of a big river, makes otters a bit hard to find around here, but they do occur further south in the Sabi Sands. And a brown hyena, I mean, that's only been seen once ever on the live drives, and I only know of about 5 brown hyena sightings in the history of the Sabi Sands, or since it's been open to Kruger. And what else? What else? Racking my brain. But African wildcat is a really great one for Jamie, and a really great one for everyone who is watching this morning. That is incredibly special. It's not something you see often. So we're making our way now towards where Karula's last tracks were. And I also heard there is a herd of elephants in the area. So double bonus, Karula tracks and some elephants. There we have the best sighting of them, but some of Queen Karula's more favoured meal tickets. Oh, they're gonna run, don't run. You got them, Dave?
Yep.
Here we go. Let's take it back. Oh, it's hiding. Still there.
Got him.
There we go. Off it goes. There was a pair of grey duiker off their scuttle. Now, this is one of the reasons Karula really favours this area. There's a lot of duiker and a steenbok in that area. And she is a beautiful female, but she's not the biggest female. So quite often if she catches something a bit bigger, it's very difficult for her to hoist it, and she often loses it to hyenas. So she seems to focus on moving through the monkey orange thickets, hunting specifically for steenbok and duiker. So that's why she really likes this area. Not to say she won't grab a bigger animal. She is an opportunist. She is a predator. So she will definitely take that. But she does seem to prefer the smaller antelope species. So while we get onto the tracks of Queen Karula, let's go back to Jamie and the African wildcat.
I owe you a tremendous apology. I was listing the Latin name of the wrong subspecies of wildcat. My apologies. It is Felis sylvestra cafra, is the southern African wildcat. So I really do apologize to that. I'm not going to take you away for too long from our wonderful African wildcat sighting, but everybody loves kittens, and luckily Emma has come through for me, despite the fact that she's very much on holiday, to send through the picture of the African wildcat mom, the reserve where I used to work, along with her kittens. This is the serval kitten over here. This is the little serval kitten. And then, poor mom, you can see she's had a litter of 2 plus a serval. And then poor mom starts to have to deal with a much larger serval. How's the reflection there? Should I tilt it forward a bit? Yes. Isn't she absolutely gorgeous? Just a little awe moment. Here's the little serval there. You can see the slight difference with the patterns and colorations. Now these are purebred black feet. It's also another indicator of an African wildcat. And there you go. Poor mom now dealing with basically what's kind of like a cuckoo baby to one of the smaller bird species. Now absolutely enormous. But as you can see, lots of cats like that, exceptionally tolerant of babies that are not their own if they're presented with the opportunity to suckle them while that baby is still young. So just a little awe moment, because everybody loves kittens, and African wildcat kittens plus a serval kitten thrown into the mix doesn't really get better than that. I'm going to put something to you. I don't think that this wildcat is going to do all that much more. We have had an incredible sighting, far longer than I expected to have it. Yep, fast asleep. I'm going to put it to you. I'm happy to stay here for the rest of the sunrise safari, but I do not think we're going to get more of a change of position than we've seen. Might open its eyes a few more times. So we'll put it to popular vote whether you would like to stay or whether you would like to go and look for those baboons that we saw sprinting across the road earlier. And here's a very, very good question for you. Lisa Montez, she's seen a video of a baboon killing leopard cubs, and would they do the same to an African wildcat, and maybe even an African wildcat kitten? In a very rare situation, yes, potentially. Baboons can be fearsome predators. There are certain populations with whom hunting has become a habit and a tradition in the baboon troop. Not so much in these kinds of areas, but certainly up towards Eastern Africa. Now, a baboon killing a leopard, of course, is a different thing. That's less for food and more for making sure that that leopard doesn't grow up big and strong and then hunts the baboon. And most of you know that baboons and leopards are arch enemies in the bush. And there's a very good reason for that. That's because baboon societies are oligarchies, which means there's more than one dominant male. Now, a 25-kilogram male baboon on his own would not be able to tackle an adult leopard, but 3 or 4 of them, with their enormous 5-centimeter, 2 or so inch canines, would definitely pose a tremendous threat. And they kill leopard cubs because leopards are the one animal that are capable of following them up trees and hunting them. And Karula, of course, killed that baboon, and Kunuma was it Kunuma or Quarantine? Somebody told me about a sighting. I think it was Karula that killed a baboon or was feeding on a baboon. No, it was Kunuma. I think Brent told me about Kunuma. Yes, it was Kunuma. Sorry, Karula killed the monkey and Kunuma killed the baboon. All before my time. Both of those are leopards. But that doesn't really answer your question, because you were asking specifically, Lisa, about wildcats. Yes, I think that a baboon, if it could catch it, would potentially kill an African wildcat. I think that that kind of scenario is relatively unlikely, though, because an African wildcat is far less of a threat to a baboon than a leopard is. That sort of goes without saying. A wildcat is not going to hunt a baboon. So for the most part, I think you'd probably find that they would stay out of each other's way, and you wouldn't have that kind of a threat from either species. That would be my suggestion in that kind of situational circumstance. I can't believe nobody else was interested in coming to join my African wildcat sighting. I'm very surprised. Me too. Ellen, in Arkansas, I am totally with you. I'm also amazed at how relaxed this wildcat is around the vehicle. I thought that we were going to be limited to an early morning sighting in the dark with the spotlight, and that it would then disappear off. I think that the distance helps tremendously in terms of our sighting. As I said, or as VM essentially confirmed, we're about close to 60 feet away from it, and it has plenty of cover and vegetation. I think if we'd encountered it in the open, things might have been very different. But as it is, very, very relaxed and calm. And it helps, of course, that we haven't tried to trundle after it or drive a little bit closer. We've just given it plenty of space. And as a result, we've been able to enjoy its company for the last 2 hours. Incredibly fortunate. Definitely not the plan I had going for the morning, but then, as you know, planning a live drive is pretty much a futile exercise. Things are inevitably going to change. good observation from Lois, watching in Buffalo. Very good morning to you. You're saying it's interesting that the African wildcat has a lighter patch on the back of the ears as opposed to the lion that has that black patching behind the ears. Really, really good point. We know, of course, that the black patches behind the lion's ears, as a social predator, as a social hunter, serve an essential purpose in terms of visual communication. Just that slight twitch of an ear, research is now showing, is enough to give direction to the rest of the pride whilst they are hunting. But light and dark are both ways of emphasizing a body part in animals in the African bush. You see it with the white tip of the tail underneath the leopard. Underneath the tail of a leopard. When the leopard twitches its tail, you immediately see that. And the main theory behind that is, again, it's an emphasis towards one of the most essential parts of a leopard's visual body cues, just emphasizing its body language and its moods by the swishes of its tail. And then, of course, bear in mind, when we're looking at one of the smallest members of the cat family that you can see out here, that we are talking about two distinct groups of cats. We've got the felis cats, of which the African wildcat, small-spotted, black-footed, and even the serval and the caracal, they fall under and are more closely related to each other than they are to lions and leopards. Lions and leopards, of course, being part of the Panthera genus as opposed to the Felis genus. And then if we go further back up the family tree, then they start to fall under the Felidae family. So different evolutionary lines, but very valid observation, because again, the one thing that we've got in common with the African wildcat, the serval, the leopard, they've all got these disruptive coloration markings to them. In the case of the African wildcat, there's little stripes around them, and if we could, minor shift of focus there, but nothing too urgent. If our lovely wildcat had felt like standing up today, we might have had a chance to have a look at the stripes down its legs as well. And I would be able to show you more distinctly how different the shape is of an African wildcat from a domestic cat. It's a beautiful. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to show you an African wildcat tracks, but while you're all making up your minds as to whether you would like to stay or to go, Brent has found a different set of tracks to show you.
So, really exciting. We found really fresh female leopard tracks. Now, it's possibly Karula, but it could also possibly be shadow in this area. So you can see they're quite small. I'm going to go with Karula just because of the size. Shadow's tracks are slightly bigger, and she's heading in a westerly direction. So she's crossed over our southern boundary. We're now sitting on Philemon's cut line. And what we've done is we've dropped Hubert off, and he's taken off on foot, and he's got a radio to contact me. In the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to loop a larger loop around Hubert and see if we can find tracks on the road. But Hubert's got a much better chance of finding her on foot than we do from the vehicle. So, fingers crossed, can we make it a tri-cat morning? That is what we were going to find out. I think we can, but I am an eternal optimist. And I think the cats have given us a hard time for the last while, so it's about time they show us a little love. I know, it's warming up nicely, so I think it's time to change outfits slightly. Off with that, on with that. And I think it's about time the scarf came off. But it is getting lovely and warm. It is going to be a beautiful winter's day. sorry, Ephraim's just calling me on the radio. He's moving into the area. And before I answer Ephraim, we got a question from Ramblin. Wants to know, what is the coldest temperature I've experienced at Djuma? Well, my personal coldest temperature, I think last year we hit 4 degrees Celsius one morning, and I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit. I think the rule is you double it and add 30, I think. So if that's the case, it's 38 Fahrenheit, but I could be completely wrong, because conversions are definitely not one of my strong points. Standing by, Ephraim. Ephraim, if they've crossed Philemon's dip heading towards Zoe's, and there's Hubert checking for the tracks. I'm going to have a quick chat, see what's happening. He's checking to see if they've crossed Zoe's or they've headed further to the north in the block. Any luck in 4?
No.
No. Okay, so we're going to leave Hubert. He's going to walk off. The tracks must have headed further to the north. Oh, we've got a spider web. I think I got it. There we go. So Hubert's going to check further to the northeast in the block, and we're going to go very slowly around the peripheries. Now, tracking is an art, and it's an incredible thing, and it, for a stage, it was actually a sort of a dying art form, and there were very few masters of tracking left. And the safari industry, and particularly the private lodges, have sort of resurrected and not, I wouldn't say saved, but found a modern use for a really ancient art form. And there's some incredible tracking schools now that produce amazing trackers out of young people. And one of them is actually in the Sabi Sands and run by a very good friend of James and mine. And it's an incredible thing that they've got master trackers like Renius, who comes to show us how little we know about tracks every now and then, and they get to impart this vast, massive knowledge. And it is an amazing thing, and it is one of my favorite things to do. I know sometimes I get a little bit focused on tracking, but it is just one of those incredible things to be able to go out on foot and follow the footprints of a big cat to fruition. I mean, to go, well, there we go, Dave popping around, he's seen something, sorry about that. Our cameramen are a little bit OCD when it comes to keeping the lens clean, but while we check very carefully around here, and hopefully Hubert has some luck, we're going to go back to Jamie, who has got a cat.
I find that very funny, although Dave, yes, very much is ready to, has his cloth at hand to wipe the screen. VM this morning hasn't had that problem because we haven't really moved through much in the way of dust or anything similar.
I haven't done anything else. I haven't zoomed out much as well.
No, you've actually, in fact, VM's sitting quite happily in the back there on standby in case anything happens. But other than that, getting to just really enjoy the wildcat sighting, although obviously earlier when it was stalking through the thicket, things were a little bit more tricky. The people have spoken, or at least the viewers have spoken, with a 60-40 odd split that you guys would like to stay with the African wildcat. And your wish is our command, and we shall do it for you. We shall stick around for at least another 20 or so minutes before we decide to go trundling off in search of baboons, just in the hope that this African wildcat does present us with a different view, maybe, or something similar. This, for the moment, I think is probably going to be our best position. I think if we move any further back, there's going to be trees and such in the way. We are indeed the only people here, and in fact, I think what I'm going to do is, the difficulty is, this sighting for us is incredible because we have a tremendous zoom on this camera, And we've got, at the moment, the only good position in which to view this wildcat. As much as I would like to call other vehicles in, I don't know that it would be as magical an experience for them anymore. When we called Lex in, the cat was out in the open, so they could look at it through binoculars. Right now, first of all, trying to explain to them where it is going to be exceptionally tricky. And further than that, I don't know that it's going to be as incredible as it is for us. And that maybe is why the other vehicles haven't come through. As you can see, as VM zooms out right to the edge of Buffelshoek cut line, which is essentially where we are, that's it. That is the view that they would have. And yes, binoculars would certainly help. However, I'm going to just call it in one more time, just to let people know that it is still here. Morning stations, we're still with this African wildcat on Buffelshoek cut line between Sandy Patch and Aubrey's Road. It's static, visuals probably about 2 out of 5. All right, everybody, don't all rush at once. Nope. Everybody's quite content to enjoy the lion sighting, and that suits me just fine. I've got my cup of tea. The sun's heated up nicely, although I think my tea might be a bit cold at this point. I sort of forgot about it. Nope, still warm. And we shall continue on our stakeout of the African wildcat. And I can guarantee you that as soon as I get home, I'm going to be doing some serious research to find out more about this particularly amazing creature. And the dawn chorus has settled down. The birds are no longer quite as vocal as they were at the start of the morning, but there's a wonderful blanket silence to the bush in winter. Now, we've had honey badger sightings in the middle of the day with Sam. We've had an African wildcat sighting for close to the entire duration of the sunrise safari. And I hope you all realize that that you're all eagerly anticipating further sightings of this nature. It's because we're going into winter. The mornings are slightly colder, so the nocturnal animals don't feel as pressurized to disappear off. And in fact, even enjoy spending a little bit of time out in the open to sunbathe and to heat up again after a chilly night foraging. But there's also the fact that with minimal ground cover, very little grass, the trees, most of the tree species, especially the bush willows, start to lose their leaves. We've got increased visibility. We can see all kinds of things. Let's go across to Brent, who's got an aerial predator.
I don't, Brent.
We've got an African harrier hawk raiding a nest. It's a bit difficult to see at the moment. We just try slide forward. But it's busy raiding a hollow nest. It's just through here. We're gonna get a gap. Okay. So Dave shoots straight across the drainage system to the right, and there we go. Look at it. It's got its legs right down in that hole in the tree. Now they're able to dislocate their legs so they can get to places that they wouldn't normally to get something. Can't see. But it had its legs right down a hole in that weeping wattle. Cleaning its beak. I'm not sure if it maybe got something out of there. We'll see shortly. No, it didn't. But it definitely tried. So they'll raid squirrel nests, bird nests. They are very beautiful birds. There he goes. There he goes. Looking for other meals. Wasn't that incredible? Such a wonderful sighting of it. So while we're sitting here, let's look out over this vast expanse. So where we left Hubert was up on that crest over there. So he's going to be moving his way through the bush here, trying to follow those tracks. And hopefully he has some luck. And listen how the sounds have changed. So listen to how the sounds have changed since that early morning when we started. There was almost no bird calls, and then they started increasing. And now as we sit here on the high ground on Zoe's road, we can hear larks, we can hear weavers, we can hear a woodpecker in the distance. Oh, there, Dave, bird. A little bird. Ah, good one to test the bird is on. Oh, he flew. That's unfortunate. Looked like one of the little finches. I didn't get a good enough look. But there is a lovely little bird party around here. Let's see if we can catch up with a few more of the birds as they get their day going. Quite often on these cold mornings they'll bask till it's a bit warmer like now, before they really get going and start foraging. Oh, they seem to be. Oh, African harrier hawk again. Is he going to land in the marula tree? No, he's not. He flew past. And you can hear all the birds suddenly give a little alarm call as he flew over. Oh, one of the most beautiful calls out in the African bush. Mine's not a very good impression, but it is the black-crowned chagra. So Tammy is wondering, does Hubert ride around with us all day? And we send him off on tracks. Well, Tammy, normally he'll be out on bushwalk, but while we don't have a bushwalk going out, we're trying something a bit new. So, and also gives us a better chance to present. So over the weekends, while Steph's not here, we take Hubert out with us and we find fresh tracks. We drop him on the tracks with the radio and see if he can find that animal that we're tracking. And it definitely is going to increase our chances of being able to find more of the cats, and also give us a chance to concentrate more on chatting with you guys. Jen B is wondering, have I ever forgotten to pick up a tracker after drive? I've never forgotten. I've been told by a tracker not to pick him up because he hadn't found the lions yet. And he actually stayed out for about 7 hours till he found the lions. And then he called me on the radio and said, "Oh, I'm full. Come fetch me."
What about a cameraman?
What about I have forgotten the cameraman. I forgot Jandre one morning. It was quite dark and I could see there was a camera behind me. So I assumed there was something there, and then I just carried on. And I got halfway down to the access, and I was talking, and I couldn't understand why Jandre wasn't answering me. So I was like, "Jandre, what?" "Oh, there's no cameraman." I turned around. But unfortunately, that bird party did a bit of a disappearing act as that harrier hawk flew over. So let's go see what else we can find. And I haven't done a tree quiz or a nearly impossible tree quiz for a while. So while I look for a nearly impossible tree, let's jump back on board with Jamie.
Still with our African wildcat, and something that Rebecca mentioned to me has sparked off an interesting thought pattern in my head. Now, where I used to live, and we spoke about the almost domesticated wildcats that lived around there, but there were actually 2 half-bred wildcats that were neutered but were kept as pets around the farmhouse. that I lived in. I never met them. It was prior to my arrival in that particular area. But they were there to help catch and keep down the rodent population in that particular area. And it's an interesting, it starts to sort of blend into interesting questions because there's a huge trade in exotic pets, whether they be, particularly for serval. Serval's one of the easiest of the wild cats to habituate and to domesticate almost. Although bearing in mind that, you know, teaching one individual to interact with humans when it's a wild animal, you never quite get rid of that natural wild instinct that they have. Now, it's something that I feel particularly strongly about, and I'm sure that most of you with conservation mindsets will agree, that we've got tens of thousands of years, as we've just spoken about, of domestication for cats and for dogs. We don't need to add to our pet selection. We've got horses and cats and dogs and different breeds. There's no reason why, apart from sheer vanity, that a person should want to possess a wild animal as a pet. And there are, of course, certain exceptions to that, but that's something that I feel very strongly about, and I really struggle with the idea of, I can understand the attraction. Of course I can. But I struggle with the idea of keeping a wild animal in places that it shouldn't be. I had a very interesting experience with a caracal when I used to work in the Kalahari many, many years ago. And this caracal, the mother had been hit by a car in Cape Town, and the farmer had very kindly, with the absolute best of intentions, adopted the kittens. And he fed them on a mixture of baby formula, which is not quite right for a human baby formula, that is, which is really not exactly what a wild kitten needs. And as a result, these two caracals started to grow up and they became out of control, so they were sent to the area in the Kalahari that I worked in and adopted by a couple there. And the male, from what I can remember, jumped off a table, but because his bones were so weak from the wrong type of food as a baby, he actually ended up breaking his back and had to be put down. And the female lived a bit longer. She was missing 3 out of her 4 canines, again due to a calcium deficiency, but she was very content for many months. And what happened was, because of the bad diet she was given, there was quite an extended delay for the onset of her sexual maturity. So it took her a good 1.5 years longer than it would take a normal caracal. Now, caracal is a big cat. I mean, they're not quite as big as a leopard or a lion, but they are exceptionally powerful, pound for pound. They are sort of like little miniature leopards, very, very strong cats. And what happened with this poor caracal is when she hit the point at which her hormones were directing her to breed, and because she didn't know anybody else but human company, she bonded with the guy in the couple, the man in the couple, and acted very possessive over him, to the point that she actually started attacking his fiancée every time she tried to walk in the house. It's a very important lesson that was learned there about situations where wild animals are treated as, they didn't even really treat her as a pet, but that was how she had been raised, with that complete sort of comfort with human beings. And you hear the stories across the board. Monkeys in particular, monkeys and baboons, are oh so cute when they're little and tiny and their teeth haven't quite come through and humans put them in a nappy, and there's something so distressing about it, because you know that when they're going to grow up and grow older, that there are going to be problems. I've told the story of the mongoose many times, that I had dangling from my nostrils, from my septum, by its teeth, and dangled from poor Steph, who is one of our regular viewers. Those of you who know Steph, by the way, sorry, slight tangent, those of you who know Steph, she watches on YouTube quite regularly, you'll be happy to know that she is safely ensconced in South Africa. She's just been to visit Victoria Falls, and it looks as though she's going to remain here for the foreseeable future. Exciting times. She might even come and pay us a visit. But yes, she had an encounter with a mongoose that was domesticated. Yes, absolutely. Oh, my word, there's some very bright sun now that I've looked in this direction. Lisa, yes, absolutely. African wildcats do purr. We talked about their meowing yesterday and the fact that that's a very human domesticated cat thing that they've started to evolve. But African wildcats do purr, hiss, and that yowling, screeching sound, whether through fighting or through mating, that will also be within their vocal range and things that they do. Of course, all of our cat family, actually, that we get in this area can purr. The lions that you were with earlier, that low rumbling sound when the female starts to approach the male, we see it with leopards as well, that's actually her purring, believe it or not. It just sounds almost like growling to our ears because they're so big and it's such a deep bass sound. That is them purring, and cheetahs in particular are known to purr. Again, back to our pet discussion, cheetah's another animal that habituates and gets used to people very quickly and very desirable as a pet. And I have been in areas where there are sanctuaries for breeding cheetah. Different topic of discussion altogether, but I have rubbed the cheek of a wild cheetah and had it purr and rub its head against me almost like a domestic cat would do. And we've got an interesting connection with the wild animals that we have out here. Sometimes when I sit with elephants, I almost want to rest my forehead against them and give them a hug until I remember just how wild they are and how truly disrespectful that would actually be. Now, apparently, Brent has been putting forward all sorts of quizzes. Let's head across and hear his nearly impossible tree quiz.
So, welcome to the nearly impossible tree quiz. Now, I think I've got you foxed. This is the nearly impossible tree, this little bush growing on top of the termite mound. Now, I'm going to pick you a leaf. Aha. Now, in this area, we only ever really see this bush growing on a termite mound. It can sometimes become a small tree, but it normally grows very much like this. And sort of at the end of dry season, it gets these incredibly bright crimson flowers. And what's really interesting about where we're sitting right now is I've got this one, and I've got its cousin. A much bigger, easier...
Oh my goodness. Oh, flip. We missed her hunt. I'm sorry, everybody. There was absolute chaos there. In about a split second, she shot forward and she caught a fork-tailed drongo. And then she disappeared off into the bushes. And I'm so sorry we missed it. It happened in the blink of an eye. She went from it went from sleeping to disappearing off into the bush. I can't believe that happened so quickly. There was just this sudden frantic alarm calling from the fork-tailed drongo. I can't see her anymore. I'm going to try and reposition.
I recorded some of it.
You recorded some of it? Yeah. Well done, VM. That was so quick. I thought that the fork-tailed drongos were mobbing her. I didn't realize that she'd shot forward because I can't see her from my perspective. Where on earth has she gone? I'm sure she's feeding. He, she, it is feeding just in the bushes there. I was clearly in the process of retying my hair, which was driving me insane. Oh dear. I think that might be it for our wildcat sighting. That happens so incredibly quickly, but keep your eyes peeled. We might still be able to see it. I can hear the drongo's alarm calling further in response to the loss of one of their numbers. She caught something. I think it was a bird. Went in here. Stop here for a second and just double check. The cisticolas are alarm calling as well now. Very harsh sounding call. And so are the hornbills actually in response. there's a moment I will never forget. Just goes to show, lightning fast. When a cat acts, oh, we've got it, we've got the roll still. Oh, no, we haven't. No, not quite. I was hoping to keep the engine off just to be able to listen to alarm calls quicker. Well, since that did happen so incredibly quickly and took us all completely by surprise, the lovely ladies in Final Control have actually prepared a replay. So why don't you have a look at this clip that they've got for you?
In this area, we only have got its cousin. A much bigger, easier.
Wow. And that was that. Thank goodness we had a little bit of a replay to play for you. Absolutely incredible stuff. Just goes to show. We spoke about the fact that I thought that that cat was going to stay settled. Clearly not. She obviously had the opportunity presented and grasped it with both talons and very sharp teeth. Unfortunately, I think that is that she's going to have moved off into the really dense vegetation and sort of found herself a safe place to consume its meal. All right, well, we're going to move on now, since clearly that comes to the end of our amazing African wildcat setting. Meantime, let's try and get back to poor Brent's nearly impossible tree quiz.
Now I'm ridiculously jealous. I'm almost so despondently jealous at the moment. My little tree is not quite as exciting as a wildcat catching a fork-tailed drongo. But we will continue with the nearly impossible tree quiz. As we said, this is the smaller one, and there's the bigger one. And I was hoping, the reason I got my camera here is I thought I saw a leopard in a tree very far away. It turns out it wasn't. It was a funny-shaped branch. But now I've picked the two different leaves to show you, and I've popped them on the dashboard, but we're going to have a close look at them now. And let's see how clever our tree people are out there. So, you can see this is from the big tree that's sitting on top of the termite mound, which is related to the small tree. So, their leaves, although very different sized, have a very, so obviously being bigger, but they have a very similar shape and a very similar setting. So they are opposite each other directly, both of them. Now this is just much smaller and much thicker, so it looks like it, but for the same size, it's about the same gap between the different stems. So it is both of these trees have these incredible crimson flowers, and one weeps and one doesn't. Oh, someone's found us, and I think this could be a new bird for a lot of people. Don't fly away. I think he's actually not going to fly away. He's come looking for me because he saw me standing on the termite mound. You got him, Dave?
Don't.
Okay, so the far left-hand side of that branch there, and it was chittering at me. It's a greater honey guide who was trying to convince me to follow him to a beehive. But now that I've got back in the car, it can't see me as a person anymore, and it's taken off. Here you go, greater honey guide. And while you guys think about those trees, I'm going to tell you a little story about honey guides and honey badgers. So we've seen a honey badger this week. We haven't seen a honey guide, or we've seen a honey guide, but we haven't seen any beehives. So it's quite an interesting sort of folklore that continues through a lot of African cultures, and cultures that are quite diverse from each other. Now, if you follow a honey guide to a beehive, and you raid the beehive, but you don't leave any honey for the honey guide. The honey guide, the next honey guide you follow, is going to lead you to one of two very, very bad things if you're a human being. It's going to lead you into a black mamba that will bite you, or to a man-eating lion. So neither of which are pretty good. Now, the interesting thing is when you leave honey for the honey guide, you're not actually leaving honey. It doesn't really eat honey. It is after basically the baby bees. So the larval stage of the bee. So that's what they're after. And of course, well documented why a honey badger is called a honey badger is the honey guides will actively look for them and chitter at them, and they will follow that honey guide through to a nest or a beehive. So very, very interesting. I've tested it numerous times out in the bush and it really works. You can follow a honey guide to honey. Now, just think about the evolution involved in that tiny little bird, knowing that it can take humans and honey badgers through to a nest, and there will be rewards from that raid. So, of course, us humans, we don't eat the little bee larvae. We're after the honey specifically, and a honey badger eats all. But he is a really messy feeder, so there's always a lot left over. Oh, seems like a small child has got hold of the game drive radio and is singing in my ear. Can't really make out the song. It's definitely a small child. So I think what's happened is someone has stopped for a morning cup of coffee and their child has managed to get hold of the radio while they're not watching. Now, as I know as a small child, and actually having taken quite a lot of small children on safari, the radio is a great source of entertainment. Just the thought of being able to, wow, same as a cell phone with small children, they always want to talk on it. So while we're standing up there, also heard some elephants a bit further up that way, so we're going to meander towards the elephants. Tammy Peterson, you're on the right track. It's not a jackalberry, but it is one of the other trees that grow on termite mounds quite regularly. So Tammy, you're on the right track, just the wrong species. So we're still keeping a very careful look out for Queen Karula. So as I said, we've left Hubert. He's in here somewhere following those tracks. I haven't heard from him yet, but that's, oh, there we go. I've got a call from Ephraim there. Standing by. Okay, copy. Thanks very much. I heard some Mashinjan and Franklin to the north of Rebecca's Road. I'll check with Hubert now if he's got any updates. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. We're just trying to coordinate the search for Queen Karula. Oh, no, okay. Well done, Georgian, Raisa and Judy. You are spot on. The little bush that is at the bottom is Scotia capitata, the dwarf bourbean bush, and the big tree above it is the weeping bourbean tree. Well done, guys. I think I'm definitely going to have to find a harder tree for the Sunset Safari's nearly impossible tree quiz. But the problem is we've gone through quite a lot of the hard trees, so you guys are getting so good that it's really a challenge to find a tree that's going to test you guys. So let's try see if we can find those elephants. Yeah. sounded like they were at the top end of Philemon's cut line. Dave, you got your eyes open?
Oh, yes.
Not only looking for elephants, looking for leopard as well?
Always.
Not driving past sleeping cats? So this is an area Karula really fancies. There have been a lot of elephants through here during the night, so that's why it's great to have Hubert out there on foot, really checking very carefully. And the sun is definitely warming us. Well, Justin, Aaron, and James Richard, congratulations. The Greater Honey Guide was a new bird, so very happy to oblige. Hopefully we can add a few more. Now, some of you guys must be getting incredible bird lists by now, getting close on 200. There's probably only about 350 possible species. And you must remember, a lot of those are water birds, and we're not on a river and whatnot, so it's very difficult. So if you're sitting anywhere over 150 species on the live drives, it is absolutely incredible. And anyone sitting over 200, I think there might be a few game rangers who are a bit jealous of you. I think the elephants sounded like they were over here. They could still be in the block. Just heard that of an elephant chastising another. Oh, sorry, I heard it. There you go. Something was in my eye, but managed to get it out. I do love sort of later bit of the winter morning. When there's cats around, the cold is bearable. And it just, although it's one of those funny things, I really don't like the cold, but I really love the dry season because of the game viewing opportunities and the tracking. And once you get to this sort of stage of the morning and the sun starts sort of warming your back, you sort of forget a little bit about how cold it was a few hours earlier. Okay. Elephants, where are you? They could still be a little bit deep into this thicket here. This is definitely where we heard them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch off and listen for a second. And that way we might be able to predict where they're going to pop out. So remember to cup your ears. Gives you a lot more ambient sounds. So you make your ears like a kudu's ears and you can hear a lot more. Always joke, maybe we should build some fake kudu ears and go out and drive with them. Yeah, unfortunately they are quite deep in there. I can just hear a branch breaking, but probably a couple of 100 meters, and there's a very thick area. So we're not going to bash and crash in there. Okay, so while we keep checking for elephants in Queen Karula, let's go see what Jamie's up to.
Oh, while Brent is listening for elephants and tracking them at the same time, I'm trying to track down that baboon troop that we saw dash across the road earlier. Their tracks led straight across in this direction. We're going to be keeping our eyes peeled. If it's the same baboon troop that we saw the other day in the morning on the sunrise safari, and we know that they are relatively and comparatively relaxed. So hopefully we can try and find them. On the subject of tracking, just while we're cruising along, James, I know that you were asking, James Richards that is, I know that you were asking about an African wildcat's track and how similar in size it is to a domestic cat track. The answer is they are almost indistinguishable. An African wildcat, as with all cats, there's 3 lobes at the back of the track, but with those tiny little feet, and you'll see it if you go and you have a look at, if you've got pet cats, or if you know anyone with pet cats, if you go and you have a look at where they've walked, you'll see that only really the 2 lobes, at the 2 large lobes, actually show through on such a tiny track. Civet, serval to an extent, caracal it's a bit clearer because their feet are a little bit larger, but you'll usually find that you only can see clearly with the 2 lobes. And we're talking about, in terms of scale, about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in length. A tiny little track and slightly more elongated. I think, James Richards, you will have a picture of a civet track somewhere in your tracking scrapbook, so you'll be familiar with what those look like. And it's a little bit more elongated than the civet track is, but roughly the same sort of size. A little bit narrower. And there you go, a little bit of a lesson about African wildcat tracks. Let's see where these baboons have gone. While we look for the baboons, that's another animal that people, particularly in South Africa, although obviously things are changing, awareness is changing, but it's another animal that people do like to keep as a pet. Now, Nigel, you were wondering, apart from their hunting strategies and their hunting success rate, abilities, what else does domestication change in a wild animal that has been included in domestication? Let's take an extreme example. Let's go with dogs. Scientists have now shown, because of that pack mentality that dogs' original ancestors would have shared, they have now come to depend upon us as a member of their pack, and they literally have an incredibly close bond, to the point that the chemicals in their brains have actually changed to release oxytocin when they see us as people, when they see a pack member. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't always work for strangers, but certainly for dogs, and some breeds are even more so than others. For example, my Weimaraner Alexi has severe attachment to myself and to Emma. Both of us have raised her together. So it depends on the domestic dog breed, but if you're talking about a once-off, so taking a wild animal and domesticating it, it affects them in hunting is a big way, but most importantly, their social behavior. If you take a solitary animal like a cheetah, the only time they ever associate with other cheetah is when they're mating or when they have babies. So depending on the sex of the animal, you've got a really interesting bonding problem, because they only know people. And whilst it's not that they want to mate with a person, they do form that a level of a bond there, but at the same time, they're solitary animals by nature. Leopards, on the other hand, absolutely 100% cannot be safely, neither can lions and neither can tigers. Those sorts of animals cannot be safely domesticated. Now, if you take Kevin Richardson, who is well renowned for his rescuing of the big cats and his close bond with the animals that he has saved, even he will admit he's very careful that he's the only person that interacts with them. But even he will admit the dangers of such a close association. It becomes even more pronounced in primates. And primates in particular. Jenny Hubbs has said that she wouldn't be surprised if at this point we found a polar bear. I have had some really, really exceptionally good luck with unusual sightings. I know that Liam particularly enjoyed this morning, and Liam and myself have also seen a serval. So Ginny, look, I think if I see a polar bear, I will quite happily eat this cap. Watch me see a polar bear now for some bizarre reason. But no, I don't think we'll get quite that lucky. But what do you think? Should we aim for a pangolin this afternoon? Pangolin, aardvark, something along those lines. Let's really stretch out our ambitions for our sunset safari. And on that note, we've come to the end of our sunrise safari. Thank you, Viam, for your wonderful camera work, as always, and particularly in following that wildcat stalk. And thank you to Rebecca for her difficult decisions in final control, as well as to Lou, who is helping her out in final control. Most importantly, thank you to all of you for your questions and your comments, and keep them coming for the sunset safari. Have a wonderful day, and goodbye.
Well, it has been quite an exciting sunrise safari. I think if Dave and I had to describe our colour today, it's going to be yellow. Yellow with jealousy. Jamie and Viam's incredible wildcat sighting. Although we can't complain too much. We did have an amazing morning with a Birmingham boy and an Nkuhuma lioness, or two different Nkuhuma lionesses, but we followed the one for a lot more. And, well, what can you say? Wildcat, fork-tailed drongo. Very upset Franklin in the block there. So hopefully Hubert is still on Karula's tracks. And we left him, but he could have easily walked this far already. I will try to get hold of him. He wasn't answering me on the radio, but he is one of those guys. He's not going to give up till he finds her. So we've decided to give ourselves a little bit more time for this cat challenge, Sunday cat challenge. So we're going to extend it into the sunset safari. How many cats, different species of cat, can we get in a day? We're on 2, and I'm hoping we can get at least 3, and if we're really lucky, 4 or 5. But it is a challenge, and I do like a good challenge. Just listening again, but let's move on a little bit. Or will the Queen grace us with her presence in the last few moments of the sunrise safari? There is a path, an animal path she does like to use up here. So I'm going to go have a quick squiz at that, and hopefully she'll just be meandering across the road. The chances are quite slim, but always worth a gander. Now, the Nkuhuma and the Birmingham have gone into the big block, so they're still on Djuma. So we're definitely going to have them for the sunset safari. So really exciting that we still got them. I think it's very early in the mating because we only saw them briefly mate once. And she's still using her feminine wiles to keep him interested, but not giving away too much just yet. So I think maybe by the end of this evening's sunset safari, or definitely tomorrow, that mating will be in full swing. Very exciting stuff. And I think we definitely will get to Cheetah Plains, hopefully on the sunset safari, just for that possibility of that extra cat species or 2. Anna-Marie, thanks very much. Anna-Marie says, I'm moving very sprightly, like my hip is better already. Well, that cortisone injection seems to be doing the job, and hopefully it'll, well, I'm pretty sure it'll hold until we can get it fixed properly. Until then, while I wait to get it fixed, could not want for a better place to wait to getting a hip fixing, but being in the African bush and sharing it with all of you. So thanks again very much for joining us on this. We're going to use the word epic. We try not to use epic, we've used it too much. But epic sunrise safari, and that was all because of Jamie and the Wildcat. But join us for the rest of the cat challenge and a fireside chat on the sunset safari in a few short hours.